What if you received a message from someone who should not exist anymore? What if your pet, long gone, somehow found a way to reach out to you? Or what if a dream saved your life, only to later prove horrifyingly real? These are not legends. They are true stories. Strange, shocking, and sometimes terrifying, but all documented by real people. Stay until the end, because the last story will change how you see coincidences forever. In 1975, a small group of school children gathered on a warm afternoon in their playground. Their teacher had brought a shiny metal box and asked everyone to place inside a letter, a message to their future selves. One by one, they slipped folded papers into the capsule. Some wrote about cars that could fly, others about becoming astronauts, doctors, or singers. Then the box was buried beneath the playground tree, sealed tight, and marked with a single promise that one day someone would open it again. The years passed. The school was closed, the tree was cut down, and the land became an empty lot. The world moved on. Decades later, workers renovating the area found something unexpected. A small, rusted box deep in the soil. It was the time capsule. When the letters were opened, most were exactly what you'd expect. Innocent dreams of the future. Childish handwriting. Yellowed pages filled with hope. But one letter stood out. The handwriting was strange. Too neat. Too deliberate. And the date at the top didn't match the others. It was marked April 12th, 2020. The message inside described a terrible event, a mysterious disease that would spread across the world, forcing people to stay apart, wearing masks, afraid to touch one another. At first, everyone thought it was a coincidence, but as they compared details, the symptoms, the dates, even the fear described in the letter, it became impossible to ignore how precisely it matched what had just happened. Local historians tried to find out who had written it, but the student's name wasn't on the class list. No one remembered them. The family records showed they had moved away shortly after 1975, and were never heard from again. Some called it a prediction. Others called it a trick. But no one could explain how the letter ended up sealed inside a box buried 45 years earlier. Today, that same letter sits locked behind glass in the local museum. Few dare to read it aloud, and those who have say the handwriting looks disturbingly fresh, as if the ink hasn't aged a single day. In 2009, a man named Daniel lost his beloved golden retriever, Max. They had been together for over a decade, through breakups, jobs, and long, quiet winters. When Max passed away, the house felt hollow. Daniel couldn't even bring himself to move the old dog bed near the fireplace. He kept Max's collar on his desk, beside a photo of the two of them at the lake. Years went by, but every time he saw that photo, the same ache returned. On the 10th anniversary of Max's passing, Daniel decided to do something simple, to write a letter. He wrote, "Dear Max, thank you for being there when no one else was. I hope you're chasing endless fields somewhere." He signed it, sealed it in an envelope, and tucked it inside a drawer. It was just a small act of closure, or so he thought. 2 weeks later, Daniel opened his mailbox. Inside was a small envelope. No stamp, no return address, just his name written in careful handwriting. When he opened it, his hands trembled. The note said, "I miss you too. Thank you for loving me, Max." The handwriting wasn't his. It wasn't a friend's either. It looked eerily like that of his late wife, who had passed the year before, a woman who had loved Max as much as he did. Daniel felt the air go cold. He asked his neighbors, the post office, even his relatives. No one had left a letter. There were no fingerprints, No traces of ink transfer, no signs it had ever been mailed. He placed the letter next to Max's collar, unsure what to believe. Was it a prank? A message from someone who knew his story? Or something else entirely? That night, as he sat by the fireplace, the collar jingled softly. The sound of metal brushing against wood, the sound he hadn't heard in years. Daniel froze, then smiled through tears. He never got another message. But from that night on, every time the wind moved through the house, he swore he could hear a familiar sound, a gentle wagging tail in the dark. In a small Italian village stood an ancient church, quiet and forgotten. For generations, its most prized treasure was a large oil painting, a holy scene, faded and cracked with time. The villagers barely noticed it anymore. One day, the church council decided to restore it. They hired a team of experts from Rome to carefully remove centuries of dust and decay. It was meant to be a simple restoration, a return to beauty. They uncovered beneath the surface was something no one expected. As the top layer of paint peeled away, a faint outline began to appear. A figure that wasn't supposed to be there. A man, tall and shadowed, with eyes so dark they seemed almost alive. The brushwork was perfect, too precise for an accident. When historians compared records, they found something chilling. Early sketches of the same artwork contained no such figure. It had been deliberately painted over centuries ago, erased from history. No one knew why. When the restoration was finished, the painting was displayed to the public. Crowds came to see it, and some said that when they looked closely, the figure's eyes seemed to follow them across the room. At night, guards began hearing noises. Footsteps echoing near the chapel, whispers that stopped when the lights came on. One worker quit after seeing the shadow of a man reflected in the glass, when no one else was there. Within weeks, the church decided to remove the painting. It was locked in a basement, covered once more. But even now, visitors say the air grows cold near that room, and candles flicker when someone mentions the painting's name. No one knows who the hidden figure was. Some say it was the original artist's self-portrait. Others whisper it was someone he had wronged, someone who refused to be forgotten. One quiet evening, a journalist named Claire was finishing her last assignment when something unusual appeared in her inbox. The timestamp read March 4th, 1996. Decades before that email service even existed. It had no sender, no subject line, just a single message body. An accident will happen at the corner of Birch and Holden. Save those who can be saved. The email's formatting looked wrong, as if written on an old terminal, and the address it came from wasn't traceable. Claire assumed it was a prank. Maybe some leftover spam glitching through old servers. Still, she felt a strange pull to check that intersection before heading home. But it was late, and rain was falling hard, so she shut down her laptop and dismissed the thought. The next morning she turned on the news, and froze. A building had partially collapsed overnight at the same corner. The headline mentioned the exact address from the message. One passerby had been seriously injured. Claire's stomach sank as she reopened her inbox, but the message was gone. No trace in sent or received mail. Her email provider claimed no record existed of anything arriving at that time. No one could explain it. Weeks passed. Claire kept thinking about it, whether she could have done something, whether the email was real. Eventually, she decided to include the event in a lecture she gave on digital phenomena. Strange transmissions, lost data packets, ghost messages from obsolete systems. After the talk, a man approached her quietly. He was pale, holding a printed page. It was the same email, same wording, Same impossible date. He said he'd found it 10 years earlier, on a floppy disk inside an abandoned newsroom. No network, no connection. Yet the message was identical. To this day, no one knows how the same email appeared decades apart, or who was meant to read it in time. An antique dealer once purchased a forgotten portrait at a small estate sale. It wasn't remarkable at first glance. Just a quiet painting of a calm-faced figure with a neutral expression. The eyes, faintly reflective beneath layers of old varnish, almost seemed to follow the light when he moved around it. When the dealer brought it home, he placed it in his study, a dimly lit room lined with old furniture and heavy curtains. Nothing unusual happened at first, but over the following nights, he noticed subtle changes, barely perceptible shifts in the air, as though the room held its breath when he entered. Some mentioned hearing the faintest sound, like the gentle creak of wood or a vibration deep inside the frame. Others said the light in the room seemed slightly dimmer when they looked directly at it. When photographed, the portrait appeared inconsistent. In some pictures, the eyes looked softer, almost sad. In others, they caught the flash like a mirror, glowing faintly, as though alive. Experts who examined it found nothing wrong, just paint, varnish, and canvas. They dismissed everything as tricks of light and imagination, but those who stayed in the room longer than a few minutes often described the same feeling of being quietly observed, as if the calm expression in the painting hid something aware. Eventually, the dealer decided to sell it to a museum. Today, it still hangs in a small side gallery, surrounded by motion sensors and cameras. Staff say the sensors near that corner trigger randomly at night, even when no one is there, and the cameras show only the still face of the portrait, staring into the dark. In a quiet apartment at the edge of the city, an investigator reviewing an old case discovered something unexpected. It was late at night, and the building around him was empty. He was going through archived audio recordings, simple background captures from the scene of a previous incident. At first, the playback was ordinary. Footsteps, doors, faint echoes of conversation. Then, beneath the static, a voice emerged, clear, rhythmic, and unmistakable. It repeated a single phrase over and over. The words matched a line from an old report, a phrase spoken by someone who, according to all records, had never been recorded alive. Tracing the source of the sound led to a strange clue. In the original apartment, there had once been a cage. The former resident had owned a talking bird, a parrot known to mimic human voices. But the resident had moved away months before the event, and the cage had been left empty ever since. Technicians analyzed the recordings. They ruled out interference. The frequencies and tone matched a genuine human pattern, not digital distortion. They replaced the equipment, yet the same phrase continued to appear in every new recording. Exactly the same pitch, same breath pattern, as if the voice itself lived inside the walls. Weeks later, the investigator archived the data. The recording now sits deep within a secure digital library, labeled simply as Case 47B. Unexplained audio loop? To this day, those who listen claim to hear something faint beneath a phrase, a rustle of feathers, a breath, a subtle echo answering itself. And in the last few seconds of the file, just before the sound cuts off, the same phrase repeats one final time, quieter, slower, as though whatever learned it was still trying to speak. One Sunday afternoon, a man named Daniel wandered through an old antique market. Among boxes of faded postcards and dusty trinkets, he found a vintage camera from the 1950s. Heavy, metallic, still cool to the touch. Inside was a half-used roll of film. The seller didn't even notice it was there. Out of curiosity, Daniel decided to develop the photos. Most of the images were simple. Family gatherings, city streets, children playing in old clothes, cars from another era. But the final frame made him stop breathing. It showed him, unmistakably, standing in front of his own apartment building. The same doorway, same railing, same tree outside. Except the photo had clearly been taken decades ago. He tried to rationalize it. Maybe someone else looked like him. Maybe it was an illusion. But when he checked the negatives, the image was part of the same film roll. No edits, no modern marks. It was real. Days later, he tested the camera himself, taking a self-portrait in his bathroom mirror. When he developed that new film, another figure appeared beside him, slightly blurred, dressed in 1950s clothing, standing perfectly still, shaken. He locked the camera in a closet and tried to forget it. But a week later, returning home, he noticed something lying on his doorstep. A printed photograph, freshly developed, showing that same image again. Only this time, the figure wasn't beside him. It was standing behind him, closer than before. Daniel threw the camera away the next morning. Yet sometimes when he walks past photo shops, he swears he sees that same image, faintly displayed behind the glass, waiting for him to notice. During a quiet weekend, a college student named Ethan wandered through a neighborhood garage sale, looking for something interesting to decorate his dorm room. On an old wooden table, he found a small silver voice recorder, scratched, dusty, but still working. A strip of yellow tape on the back read, "Do not play." He laughed, assuming it was some inside joke, and bought it for $2. That evening, curiosity got the better of him. He pressed play. At first there was only static, then slow, uneven breathing. After a few seconds, a whisper, unmistakable, called his name. "Ethan!" He froze. The voice was calm, almost gentle, yet unfamiliar. He checked the device. No connection, no files, just the tape. He told himself it was coincidence, maybe an old recording from someone else. But the next night, while he slept, the recorder switched on by itself. He woke to the faint click of the buttons and a new message. "I can see you." Terrified, he removed the batteries and left the recorder on his desk. But even without power, the red light flickered once, then again. It played a final message. "Now you can't turn me off." He threw it in the trash behind his building, trying not to look back. The next morning, the recorder was waiting on his desk, spotless, tape spinning softly, whispering the same word over and over. Ethan. No one ever found out where the voice came from. And yet, sometimes, at night, he swears he hears that same breathing, not from the recorder, but from somewhere inside the room. When Emma moved into her new apartment, everything smelled of fresh paint and silence. Among the few remaining items left by the previous tenant stood a tall antique mirror, framed in dark carved wood. Its surface shimmered faintly, even in dim light, as if it absorbed more than it reflected. First, Emma adored it. The mirror made her small room seem bigger, brighter. She placed it opposite the window, so the morning sun filled the space twice. But after a week, small differences began to appear. Objects in the reflection were ever so slightly out of place. The curtain tilted the other way. A book lying closed when it was open behind her. One evening, while brushing her hair, she smiled faintly at her reflection and saw it smile back a heartbeat later. The delay was tiny but undeniable. She tested it again. Every time, her reflection moved a fraction too slow, as though it were thinking first. Days later, it began to act on its own. Once, she saw her reflection tilt its head when she hadn't moved at all. Another time, it raised its hand while hers stayed perfectly still. Panicking, Emma covered the mirror with a white sheet. But late that night, a faint glow seeped through the fabric. A cold, silvery light that shimmered across the floor. She turned away and tried to sleep. In the morning, the sheet was gone. The mirror stood uncovered, spotless, and her reflection was already smiling, waiting for her to notice. Some nights, neighbors say they see light flicker in her apartment, even though no lamps are on. And when Emma finally moved out, the landlord said the mirror was the only thing she didn't take. Oliver had just moved into a small studio apartment. Simple, quiet, perfect for a fresh start. Most of his furniture came from thrift stores and flea markets. Among them, one piece stood out, a brass wall clock with delicate hands and a glass face, ticking in a strangely soft rhythm. At first, he found the sound comforting. Then he noticed something peculiar. Every evening, precisely at 11:11 p.m., the clock stopped. Just for a second. Then it continued. Perfectly normal. Curious. Oliver set up his phone to record the moment. The next morning, he checked the footage and froze. During the single second when the clock had paused, he wasn't visible in the frame at all. The room was empty. He repeated the test the following night, and the same thing happened. At 11:11, time froze, and he disappeared. Every recording showed the same gap. Determined to understand, Oliver sat facing the clock one night, motionless, staring as the seconds approached. When it reached 11:11, the tick halted, and the air grew thick, silent. For that single second, he saw himself, another version, standing beside the clock, staring back, unmoving. Then time resumed, and the vision was gone. Shaken, he tried to remove the clock from the wall, but it wouldn't budge. The screws felt welded in place. That night, he heard faint ticking coming from every corner of the room, perfectly synchronized. The next evening, the clock stopped again, but this time it didn't start. The hands remained frozen at 11:12. Oliver vanished the same night. When police entered his apartment, the camera on his desk still filmed the clock, ticking once more, alone, steady, and louder than before. Sometimes what we call coincidence is just something we don't understand yet. A voice that knows your name, a reflection that moves on its own, a single second that disappears from time. Maybe these stories aren't about fear, but about memory. The world remembering us in its own strange way. And if you ever feel like something around you is slightly off, don't be afraid to look closer. You might just find another story waiting for you. Subscribe for more unbelievable true mysteries. The next story might be yours.